welcome back. So, have you heard the one about Helvetica, Arial, and Comic Sans? They all walk into a bar and order a drink. Bartender looks at Comic Sans and says, "Sorry, we don't serve your type here." I know. But fonts. Fonts are important. The font sets the tone for the content before you even read a word of it. It works a lot like music in a film that sets the scene. Let me give you an example. You remember this scene from Rocky. Classic scene, right? So what happens to the scene if we remove the music? Feels weird, right? You'd say that typography is what language feels like. But what's really fascinating is how we make sensory and emotional associations with fonts. For example, P. Marley creates a very different emotional response than Cooperplate, even when the content is exactly the same. How about this one? Do you think these jelly beans are more sour or more sweet? What about these? Overwhelmingly, people associate sweetness with rounded letters and sourness with jagged letters. Even when the jelly beans are exactly the same, they taste differently when primed by the font. Everything we read in magazines, books, on packages, or online impacts our subconscious perceptions of what we read. Font psychology examines the connection between those symbols on the page and the screen and how our brain processes and remembers them. It's so influential, it also has an impact on our perception of smell. Graphic designer, author, and typography researcher Sarah Hindman conducted a type tasting experiment with two identical bottles of gender-neutral perfume. One had a feminine typeface, and the other had a masculine typeface. Now, participants were asked to smell each scent and rate them on a 10-point scale, from feminine to masculine. The combined results show that scent A is rated as smelling much more feminine, and scent B is rated as smelling much more masculine. There's almost a 14% difference between the two, even though they're exactly the same scent. This shows how powerfully typographic stereotypes can influence our perceptions and our expectations. Even our motivation and behavior is influenced by font. Psychologists gave two groups of 20-year-old students copies of an exercise routine and asked them to estimate how long the routine would take them to complete and how likely they were to continue to do the exercise. Now, each group had the exact same routine, just printed in a different font. One group read the instructions in Arial. The other group read the instructions in Mistral. It's a paintbrush style that's a little harder to read. Do you think that the different fonts impacted their motivation to exercise? It did. As the researchers had anticipated, when the exercise instructions were easier to read, they assumed the exercises would be easier to do. In other words, their brains assumed that easy to read means easy to do, and they were much more motivated to exercise too. This idea of how fonts influence our perception and our behavior is not only gaining traction with marketers and engineers, but also with folks who are really interested in company culture and employee engagement. The bottom line is fonts give words personality, and that personality influences our perception of those words and our motivation to act upon them.